I'm Tyrion, heir of Anaria.
Hey everyone, it's me HawkeyeG here, and today we're doing another overview video, this time for the Eataine faction of the High Elves and the Mortal Empires campaign. So let's jump on in and take a look. So before we really get started, I do want to quickly discuss the unique mechanics and traits like I always do. That being said, there really aren't any for the Eataine faction, right? There's really nothing like specific that sets them apart from the rest of the High Elves. They have the same base mechanics. Basically, you're just looking at the influence mechanic, which allows you to spend this special resource called influence to improve your relations with someone or to worsen relations. And you can do this between any two factions, right? So you can be friends with, you can make yourself friends with someone, or you can make yourself enemies with somebody, which you probably wouldn't want to do, but like most likely you're going to make two other people enemies, right? So you can trigger proxy wars in that way. You're also capable of pulling and using the Sword of Cain. That's really up to you. That's kind of a separate mechanic all on its own. And then whenever you make a trade deal with somebody, if you have an active trade route with another faction, let's see if we can just get an example here. You get vision over their territory, right? So those are just the unique mechanics and traits when playing as the High Elves. There's nothing specific extra to Tyrion, so a quick coverage of that. So let's talk about the path to victory in this campaign. The early game is very similar to the Vortex campaign, but it's much smaller. Ulthuan itself has far fewer settlements. It has the same number of provinces, but far less settlements. Calador has one less. Tiranoc has two less. Some of the internal ones, like Illyrian, has one less. Eataine, this is two provinces merged into one. It used to be a total of 5. Now there's only 4 here. Safri is down 1. But so what you're looking at here, you have some immediate threats that you want to deal with, right? You want to take out these Dark Elves, try to secure yourself the entire province. There's also, you can't see it, but I can tell you that there is a greenskin army that's over here fighting with Tor Yvresse and Eltharion. And so you basically want to wipe those two out first. That's the best way to start. Once you've successfully taken out the Dark Elves, and potentially taken out the Greenskins as well, or whatever happens over here, you are now left on the island mostly with the High Elves. There's still, some stragglers on the north, but you're not worried about that because you're on the south side. So here what you want to do is decide who do you want to befriend and who do you want to make enemies of, kind of like in the Vortex campaign. It's possible to confederate some like in this campaign it's a little different because pretty much everybody likes you. Safri still doesn't like you, but everyone else does. That being said, since these are all such small provinces, it's really easy to take them out, right? If you want to, you can capture every one of these provinces for yourself. You don't have to confederate anybody. However, a healthy mix of confederation and attacking will help you kind of clear everything up faster. As long as you can survive the public order issues, which honestly shouldn't be that big of a problem, and you don't have too much territory this early on. Beyond that, you want to ally yourself with the playable factions, right? You have Yvresse over here, you have Avalorn to the north. You want to try to become friends with these factions because ideally you'd like to confederate them and get their legendary lords under your control. They're also going to be better at taking territory, so it just kind of saves you a little bit of time in the long run. You don't have to take 2 kinds of territory at once. You can just have them do the left side and you do the right side, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, so you basically just have a bunch of minor High Elf factions that you want to go through and clean up real quick and get security on the island. Once you feel like you have the island relatively secured, most of the minor High Elf factions are pretty much wiped out or eliminated. The Dark Elves, you can see they're pushed to the brink up here, and all we have left is the 2 other playable factions of the High Elves. It's now time to fight the Dark Elves, your arch nemesis, your rivals. They just have a ton of suitable, like all of this frozen, whatever, I don't know what type it's called, frozen something. It's just frozen. Okay, cool. All of that territory is going to be here and up to the north. It's all going to be suitable climate for you. There's a ton of settlements here. There's a little bit of mountain territory, a slight amount of desert here, but overall this is going to be your best option for where to go first, right? Once you have as much territory as you can claim for yourself, on your main island, you want to go to the northwest because this is where the majority of the viable territory will be. There's some in the jungle to the southwest, but as you can see, it's like a mix between suitable and unpleasant. If you go to the east, it's pretty much all unpleasant climate. So you want to, plus fighting the Dark Elves, they're your natural enemy. So really the next thing you want to do is move to the northwest here. You want to attack Morathi. You want to be able to take out this playable faction. You can get a really good trait for defeating their legendary lord. Some people like to try to farm it, and that's certainly not a bad idea. But in addition to that, the capital of this province has a legendary or a landmark building that generates a lot of income per turn, and then every one of these minor territories has some kind of unique resource or like a trade resource, right, that you can make use of. So getting this province under your control is going to give you a lot of strength and a lot of income and a lot of ability to move forward. The next thing you probably do then, of course, is secure this province as well. Pretty easy to defend and hold down if you need to like build up or take time to repurpose your armies or whatever it is you need to do. As you make your way north, you are eventually going to discover the Sisters of Twilight. Now, they have a little bit of aversion, and by this point in time, you're going to have some sort of great power penalty. You're also going to want to slowly but surely confederate the other High Elf playable factions on your continent, if possible. For the Sisters of Twilight, I don't know, do whatever you feel like doing with them. If you can get them to be your friend, it's nice to have them maybe hold some of this outside territory. In this particular campaign, they basically had like one piece of several different provinces. They end up taking this one as well, and so I kind of decided that I would like to have them instead. Like really, it just kind of depends on the size that they've grown to and what territories they have a hold of. If you can get them to hold the desert and the Witchwood and then be your friends, that's kind of nice. If not, I wouldn't worry about it. There's really not too much else to worry about here. You can see there's a chance that Nagaryth might still be alive, but there's also a much better chance that this faction gets wiped out early on. It's kind of a toss-up. Here we do actually see that they're alive, so how easy it is for you to push north is going to kind of be determined by those things. You're going to have to fight the Dark Elves primarily. You might have a little other scuffles with other people. But in general, you just keep pushing north. You just keep taking this territory. I do ally myself, or not fully ally, but, non-aggression pact military access and trade agreement with the Lizardmen, just because it's easy and convenient, right? It's a good way for me to continue making money, and they're a relatively neutral party in terms of me as the High Elves, so I'm not worried about what... And I also kind of don't want them interfering with whatever I'm doing. I don't want them to stab me in the back and try to take good territory from me, so it just makes sense to do for the time being. As you continue to progress, you just keep working your way north. You can kind of guess where this is going. You can see how we've taken territory. We continue to confederate the other legendary lords and playable factions. But the main reason that I wanted to stop here is because we're on turn 91. Pretty much every campaign, somewhere between, or it's at least very typical, between turn 90 and turn 100 for the first wave of chaos to spawn. Meaning that in another 7 turns, there's going to be a handful of chaos that are going to spawn up here in the north as well and start wreaking havoc. It's obviously, at this point, going to threaten the Dark Elves more than it's going to threaten me, but you still don't want to run face first into like the Chaos armies, or kind of... You just don't want to play too recklessly. You want to make sure that you've got all your bases covered, you've got enough armies to support everything that you want to maintain, and that if you're trying to take everything, that you take everything, or else do it section by section and play defensively on one flank and offensively on another flank. And that will help you progress through the north, and essentially you're going to end up just taking all of this territory if that's possible. Otherwise, you kind of have to react to the Chaos invasion and how that plays out. So, once you've successfully dealt with Chaos, and you've successfully dealt with the Dark Elves, you kind of reach this point where now you actually have a pretty wide variety of options, right? You've got control over this territory, and honestly, you don't really have to leave anything here. You want to make sure to come back in about 50 turns, right? Whatever turn the Chaos Invasion happens on, try to make a note of that, because in about 50 turns, they're going to reappear. And so you're going to want to make sure that not only are these places fortified, but you actually have a couple of armies to hold it down, because they're going to spawn, depending on the Chaos difficulty setting, it's going to change, but on just a normal Chaos, it's like 2-2-2-1-1, something like that, right? So almost like, 8 to 10 armies are going to spawn in there. That was 7 that I counted, but anyway. So you want to make sure you kind of have this stable and under control. You don't necessarily have to sit here and wait. But the real question is, like, where do we go next, right? What's the next strategy? Because if you're looking to complete the campaign objectives, what you need to do is, at least for the short campaign, control Ulthuan. All right, we got that done through confederations and early game wars. Destroy the 2 dark elf factions in the northwest. That should be taken care of by this phase. Not necessarily this turn, right? But that's your next step. And then we just have to control any 8 of the following settlements. Ensure that these 2 buildings have been constructed. So the Gates of Lothern is the landmark building here. The Sacred Flame of Assyrian is the landmark building here. You should be able to take care of that, honestly, pretty well. I mean, the Gates of Lothern, obviously, you have to get to tier 5. But point is, you should have that province under your control very early on in the game. So it's easy to do. And then basically just wait for chaos to show up, right? So now we've got about 40, 50 turns, in this campaign. Might be different in yours, it might not. Basically, your next 2 goals are wait for chaos to spawn so that they can be defeated, and then control a majority of settlements. Now, this is what I mean when I say this part of the campaign really opens up, right? You can achieve this objective either through direct control or through vassals and military allies. Well, you can't vassalize people as the high... I'm not going to be able to vassalize Hexawaddle, so I'm going to have to do it either military allies or direct ownership. You could ally yourself, military ally, with all of the lizardmen to take control of some of the key settlements here, like Hexawaddle and Itza, or you can go to war with them. They have 50-50 suitable and unpleasant climate, so you'd be able to get a lot of good territory with some good landmarks, lots of trade resources. If you don't feel like fighting the lizardmen, then you should military ally with them. Khemri doesn't appear to be over here right now, but this is an easy option for a city to either capture or control. Same thing here with Tilia, right? You've got 3 major settlements here, and of course, it's probably more likely that it's going to be Skaven who's still alive than it is to be these 2 Southern Realms factions, but there's some territory there. There's also the Empire and the Bretonia, right, that you can ally yourself with. And quite frankly, that might even be the easier option. Well, it certainly would be the easier option if we're later into the campaign. As soon as chaos spawns, every Order faction gets that buff, the Shield of Civilization, which just gives you a natural 50 or 100 additional relations with all of the Order factions. So it would make it really easy for you to just military ally with Reichland and Corone and with Hexawaddle, and even with some of these minor Lizardmen factions, in order to get all of the capital settlements that you need to be technically under your control and to be able to win the game that way. So from here on out, you can play pretty passively. You can decide to ally with all of the, forces of order and go over here and start destroying Norscan territory. Or maybe you make a little expedition into the Badlands and you want to finally shut down the Greenskins once and for all. Or, honestly, whatever you want to do. You want to go fight Bretonia? Go for it. You want to go fight the Empire? Go for it. In this campaign, I end up spending those 50 turns wiping out Hexawaddle, and I actually managed to claim enough territory between a military alliance with the Bretonians and then personal ownership of the rest of these kinds of territories. With Hexawaddle and Itza, and then I grabbed Sartosa from Tilia. And I was actually able to do that before the second round of chaos spawns in. And in doing so, we actually caused the campaign to end the moment that chaos spawned in. But regardless of that, like I said, you can from here you can go anywhere and do anything. You can ally with people that are factions of order in order to just get military alliances and complete the objectives that way. You can go and fight them because, there's a good chance that if you're playing as Eataine, you're going to be massive, right? This was an outstanding campaign for me, but even so, you're still a very powerful faction right from the get-go. So it's very easy for you to kind of go around and bully whoever you want, and I feel like I've repeated that point 3 times now. There's really not that much to look at. In fact, we'll kind of take a look at the course that my campaign took here, but that's basically it. That's what you want to look at, right? You can go wherever and do whatever you want. In my case, I end up confederating the Order of Lore Masters, and then just proceeding to attack all of these Lizardmen factions and eventually Hexawaddle. and then just grabbing the last few territories I need and making some alliances in order to secure the win. So in the course of my campaign, I initially gained the Awakening through Confederation by confederating the Order of Lore Masters. I did lose it to Hexawaddle, but we'll come back and grab it anyway. But you're basically just trying to pick up key cities here, right? You've got Eataine here, where we actually have taken Hexawaddle, right? Sent a few armies back from the north, sent them down to kind of cut through Hexawaddle territory. They wanted to come and take the fight to the south because this is where I initiated it, and they were able to confederate some of these parties as well. But now we own Eataine. We're going to be able to take the Awakening. We own Hexawaddle, and that puts us at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. With the Awakening is 7. So at that point, there's very little you need to do, right? I mean, again, there's 3 potential settlements here. Or we could go here and just take Khemri from Talaqua. Or we can try to military ally with Reichland or with Caron, because as long as they control their capital, that's the 8th settlement you need. So really, that's what all your options are. You also, I suppose, have the option of taking any of these 3, right? Skavenblight, Miragliano, and Sartosa. These are this is 3 settlements right here, really easy to take. That would be the same as having taken Hexawaddle, Eataine, and the Awakening, right? That has the same value. So you could maybe use that as a way to stay friends with the Lizardmen and perhaps go here, fight the Southern Realms a little bit. Or potentially, if this is Skaven and the Pirates of Sartosa surviving instead, with perhaps the Greenskins making headway into the land here. I mean, they're getting destroyed by the Empire at this point in the game because they're finally steamrolling. But you get the picture, right? You have a couple of different possibilities for how you can go about this. Again, these 3 keystone territories are really easy to take. There's a few here from the Lizardmen, also pretty easy to take. Or you just military ally with the Lizardmen and like the human factions, and then you don't even have to do anything. So those are really your options. I could go one more ahead and just kind of show all this territory taken, but basically that's it, right? We've discussed all the options here, I think, more than enough. But so that pretty much covers it. I think it's a straightforward campaign for the first 100 turns or so. Your first step, taking the island. Second step, trying to take all of the Dark Elves territory, pushing right up to the border here. There's just so much good territory here. There's a lot of unique landmark buildings and goldsmiths. There's so much different stuff that you can get that's going to make you a lot stronger, and maybe not necessarily stuff that you always need. But there's just lots of good options here, right? So those are your kind of first 2 steps, and then from there, it's pretty open-ended. It's pretty much a sandbox, and depending on how fast you do this and the appearance of chaos, you have plenty of time to achieve your objectives in. So I hope that helps you get a better idea of how to approach the Eataine Mortal Empires campaign in Total War Warhammer 2. Again, I think it's fairly straightforward to start with and then open-ended towards the end. But of course, I look forward to any other comments or reflections on the campaign that you might have. Feel free to drop them in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.